Good morning and welcome to the Clovis Brief. I'm your host and this is Saturday, June 6, 2026. Let's start with your northern Illinois weather. Right now we're sitting at 67 degrees, feeling like 70 with overcast skies and a light wind at about 5 miles per hour. Today's going to be interesting. We're expecting rain showers with a high of 86 and a low around 66, with about 1/10 of an inch of precipitation. Sunday stays overcast, hitting 82 with a low of 60. Then we're looking at light drizzle Monday and Tuesday with temperatures in the mid-70s to low 80s. Wednesday is when things get active. We're talking thunderstorms with a high near 90 degrees. So enjoy the relatively calm weekend before that midweek weather arrives. Coming up today, we've got a packed episode. Iran and the US have exchanged strikes in the Gulf, testing that fragile ceasefire. Here in Illinois, the Bears are making major moves on a potential Hammond Stadium project. In tech, we're diving deep into a fascinating debate about whether AI assistants are actually introducing more bugs into critical software. There's a controversial rsync analysis making waves. And in security, CISA has added several critical vulnerabilities to their known exploited catalog, including a SolarWinds flaw and a Palo Alto authentication bypass. All that and more ahead. Let's get into the world and U.S. news. The BBC and NPR are reporting that the U.S. and Iran exchanged strikes in the Gulf overnight in what's being called the latest test of the fragile ceasefire. According to the BBC, air raid sirens sounded across Bahrain as Iranian missiles and drones headed toward Gulf allies. The U.S. military confirmed it shot down multiple Iranian drones launched toward American partners in the region. This comes as tensions remain extraordinarily high. The Strait of Hormuz remains mostly closed, and PBS NewsHour is examining what happens as oil supplies continue to dwindle. Iran's Revolutionary Guard is claiming responsibility for attacks on what they describe as military targets, while the U.S. struck Iranian radar installations in response. This is exactly the kind of escalation everyone feared might unravel the tentative peace. In Ukraine, Reuters and the BBC are reporting that Russia's President Putin has rejected Ukrainian President Zelensky's latest offer for direct talks to end the war. Putin stated there is no point in meeting with Zelensky over ending the conflict. Meanwhile, Ukraine targeted St. Petersburg again overnight with drone strikes, continuing its campaign against Russian economic infrastructure. PBS NewsHour has analysis on what Putin's rejection means for efforts to end Russia's war. Essentially, it signals Moscow still believes it can achieve its objectives militarily and sees no need to negotiate from what it considers a position of relative strength. Closer to home, NPR and NBC News project that Democrat Xavier Becerra has won the top spot in November's race for California governor. Becerra, who previously served in the Biden administration, advances to the general election. AP News notes that several candidates in this race worked for Joe Biden, though interestingly, some aren't really talking about it, a sign of how the political landscape has shifted. The race will be one of the most closely watched gubernatorial contests this fall. In Congress, NPR and AP News report that the Senate has passed a $70 billion immigration enforcement bill. Trump's deportation agenda is about to get a massive infusion of funding from Congress. The legislation provides substantial resources for ICE operations, detention facilities, and border security measures. This comes as the administration continues its aggressive enforcement posture on immigration. The politics around Graham Plattner's Senate campaign in Maine continue to dominate headlines. Politico reports that Democrats are holding their breath on Plattner, with some saying this just isn't good as the Tuesday primary approaches. However, NPR reports that Plattner isn't going anywhere despite the latest controversy. He hit the campaign trail this week. And NBC News covered his events where he told supporters, "Maine had my back," in what's being seen as a significant development. Politico reports that Senator Brian Schatz of Hawaii has offered the first show of Senate support for the scandal-ridden candidate, suggesting the party establishment may be coalescing around him despite the controversies. In international elections, AP News reports that Armenia is preparing for an election on Sunday that could reshape ties with Moscow and the West. The BBC has extensive coverage of how Russia is piling pressure on Armenia's pro-Western government. This vote will be seen as a referendum on Prime Minister Pashinyan's efforts to pivot away from traditional Russian influence and toward closer ties with Europe and the United States. And on the business front, Bloomberg is reporting on Indonesia facing what they're calling a crisis of confidence as markets try to decode President Prabowo's economic policies. The uncertainty has led to volatility in Indonesian markets as investors try to understand the direction of Southeast Asia's largest economy under new leadership. Now for your local news covering Chicago and Illinois. WGN Chicago is reporting a major development that transformed the region. The Bears have voted to advance a stadium project in Hammond, Indiana. This is a significant shift in the team's stadium saga. The vote by Bears ownership moves forward a proposal for a new stadium complex just across the Illinois-Indiana border. The project would represent a massive economic development initiative for the Hammond area and would be a substantial loss for Chicago if it comes to fruition. Details on financing and timeline are still being worked out, but the ownership vote signals serious intent to pursue this option. Also from WGN Chicago, there was a violent overnight shooting on the southwest side where 2 people were killed and 5 others injured after gunmen opened fire into a group that had gathered. This happened in the early morning hours and police are still investigating the circumstances. Detectives are working to determine if this was gang-related or targeted. The shooting adds to ongoing concerns about gun violence in Chicago neighborhoods. In a disturbing incident downtown, WGN Chicago reports that 3 people were hospitalized after a stabbing and sexual assault in downtown Chicago. The incident occurred in the Loop and police are investigating the circumstances. This serves as a reminder of public safety concerns even in heavily trafficked downtown areas. Up in McHenry County, WGN Chicago reports that a 19-year-old skateboarder has been charged with felony assault after a skateboard attack near the Crystal Lake train station. The incident involved the suspect allegedly striking someone with his skateboard, causing serious injuries. The case highlights ongoing concerns about safety around public transit stations in the suburbs. In tragic celebrity news affecting the region, WGN Chicago is reporting that James Handy, an actor who appeared in Top Gun Maverick, was stabbed to death. While details are still emerging, the loss is being felt across the entertainment community with Chicago connections. And in sports news that has the entire region buzzing, Politico's New York playbook reports that Knicks fever is hitting the politicians. The Knicks beat the Spurs 105-104 for a 2-0 lead in the NBA Finals. According to ABC News and NPR, it came down to the final seconds with Wembanyama missing at the end. Politicians from Governor Hochul to various state legislators are jumping on the Knicks bandwagon, and the excitement is palpable across the metropolitan area. Time for tech, AI, and infrastructure, our longest segment today. Let's start with what's probably the most controversial tech story of the day. Over on Hacker News and Lobsters, there's intense discussion around an analysis titled, "Did Claude Increase Bugs in rsync?" This is getting 417 points and over 400 comments on Hacker News. The analysis, posted at alexisperslane.github.io, examines whether using Anthropic's Claude AI coding assistant actually introduced more bugs into rsync, the critical file synchronization tool. The researcher went through commit history and bug reports and found some concerning patterns. Now, this is sparking a much broader debate about AI-assisted coding. The top discussion thread on Hacker News asks, "What was your oh shit moment with Gen AI?" And it's gotten 343 points and over 600 comments. Developers are sharing stories of subtle bugs, logic errors, and maintenance nightmares that emerged from AI-generated code. The rsync case is particularly important because it's such critical infrastructure, millions of systems depend on it. The analysis suggests that while Claude can write plausible-looking code quickly, it may lack the deep understanding needed for systems programming where correctness is paramount. On a related note, Lobsters has a piece titled "Stop Using Conventional Commits" that's getting strong engagement with 122 points. The author at sumnerevans.com argues that the conventional commits format, those commit messages with prefixes like feat or fix, has become cargo cult practice that doesn't actually improve code quality or project management. It's part of a broader conversation about which development practices actually matter versus which are just ritual. Ladybird Browser is making changes according to Lobsters. there's a post with 92 points about changing how we develop Ladybird. The team behind this independent browser engine is shifting their development methodology. This is significant because Ladybird is one of the few efforts to build a completely new browser engine from scratch, and how they organize development will impact whether they can actually compete with the Chrome and Firefox duopoly. Hacker News has a story with 532 points about Mouseless, that's Mouseless Click, a tool for keyboard-driven control of macOS, Linux, and Windows. This is getting huge traction among power users who want to minimize mouse usage for efficiency. The tool provides system-wide keyboard shortcuts and navigation, and the comments are filled with people sharing their own keyboard-driven workflows. Microsoft has open-sourced PG Durable according to Hacker News, where it's getting 406 points. This is in database durable execution for Postgres. Essentially, it allows you to write workflows that survive database restarts and failures without external orchestration systems. This is a big deal for building reliable distributed systems. The GitHub repo is at github.com/microsoft/pg_durable, and developers are already exploring how this compares to Temporal.io and similar workflow engines. Ars Technica has a deeply concerning security story about how a USB-connected speaker can infect a PC without ever being touched. This highly reviewed consumer speaker can be hacked over the air to then infect connected devices. It's a supply chain attack vector that most people wouldn't even think about. You plug in what you think is a simple audio device, but it can be remotely compromised to deliver malware to your computer. This is exactly the kind of IoT security nightmare that keeps security professionals up at night. GrapheneOS users are facing real-world consequences for their privacy choices. Hacker News has a story with 186 points about a GrapheneOS user being reported to authorities just for using GrapheneOS. The discussion at discuss.grapheneos.org reveals that someone was flagged as suspicious by a service provider simply because they were running the privacy-focused Android variant. This raises serious questions about whether choosing privacy-enhancing technology is becoming grounds for suspicion by itself. The Zig programming language got a Zen update according to Hacker News. The commit at codeberg.org updates Zig's guiding principles, the philosophy behind the language's design decisions. For a systems programming language trying to challenge C and C++, having clear principles matters a lot. There's an excellent explanatory piece on Hacker News with 373 points. How LLMs work at 0x eyes. This is a genuinely clear technical explanation of large language model architecture without drowning in jargon. If you've been confused about what's actually happening inside ChatGPT or Claude, this is worth your time. On the hardware side, Hacker News has a story with 175 points about the intricacies of modern camera lens repair. The article at salvagecircuitry.com walks through repairing a Sigma 45mm lens, and it's absolutely fascinating. Modern lenses are incredibly complex optomechanical systems with electronics, and seeing the repair process really drives home how sophisticated this technology has become. In AI research, let's hit the archive papers. First, Archive 2606.06494, that's TailLoR, protecting principal components in parameter-efficient continual learning. The researchers are working on continual learning, which is how to keep training models on new data without forgetting old knowledge. Their TailLoR method uses spectral decomposition to protect the most important components of the model during fine-tuning. This is crucial for deploying AI systems that need to learn continuously in production. Paper 2606.06493 introduces handoff. Humanoid agentic task space whole body control via distilled complementary teachers. This is about controlling humanoid robots, specifically choosing the right command space between high-level task planning and low-level motor control. They use multiple teacher models with different specializations and distill their knowledge into a unified controller. This kind of hierarchical control is essential for getting humanoid robots to work in real environments. Paper 2606.06492 is Code to LoRa. Hypernetwork-generated adapters for code language models under software evolution. Code models need repository-level context to understand imports, APIs, and project conventions. Instead of cramming all that context into the prompt, they generate specialized LoRa adapters dynamically based on the codebase. This is a clever approach to making code models more project-aware without retraining. Google has announced Gemma 4 QAT models according to Hacker News, getting 354 points. The blog post at Blog Google covers quantization-aware training for Gemma 4, optimizing compression for mobile and laptop efficiency. Quantization is how you make models smaller and faster by reducing numerical precision, and doing it during training rather than after produces better results. This is important for running capable models on consumer hardware. And we've got a Rust inheritance article on Hacker News with 51 points, 9 ways to do inheritance in Rust, a language without inheritance. The Medium post by Carl Cady explores the various patterns Rust developers use to achieve inheritance-like behavior despite Rust's deliberate lack of traditional inheritance. Its composition over inheritance taken to its logical conclusion. From Ahead Inc. That's Ahead.com, there are several important infrastructure resources worth noting. They've published an executive playbook for liquid-cooled infrastructure for AI, which is becoming critical as GPU clusters generate more heat than traditional air cooling can handle. They're also covering production inference in the enterprise with lessons from testing Intel Gaudi 3 accelerators, and they've released benchmarking data on single-card LLM inference on Gaudi 3 for enterprise workloads. Ahead is also discussing their physical AI factory concept, a hybrid roadmap for sustainable autonomous vehicle and advanced driver assistance system development. This is all about building the infrastructure to actually run AI at scale in production rather than just in research labs. They've also covered ServiceNow Knowledge 2026, pulling out what actually matters from that conference for IT operations teams. Lobsters has a discussion on the perils of UUID primary keys in SQLite. UUIDs seem like a great idea for distributed systems, but they can cause performance issues in SQLite due to how the database handles row ordering and index structure. And in licensing news, Lobsters is discussing the total reciprocity public license and polyform licenses. These are alternative software license structures that try to find middle ground between fully open source and fully proprietary. The legal frameworks around software are evolving as companies try to protect their work while still allowing some level of community contribution. Python's Steering Council made an announcement about the JIT project according to Lobsters. Python is getting a just-in-time compiler to improve performance, and the Steering Council is setting expectations about timelines and what performance improvements are realistic. This is a major undertaking for a language as mature and widely deployed as Python. Now for your security briefing. Let's walk through the CISA Known Exploited Vulnerabilities catalog, starting with the most recent additions. CV-2000 and 26-28318 was added June 5th with a remediation deadline of June 19th. This is a SolarWinds SerView vulnerability, specifically an uncontrolled resource consumption issue. Bleeping Computer is reporting that CISA warns hackers are now exploiting this SolarWinds SerView flaw to crash servers. The vulnerability allows specially crafted post requests using the content encoding header to overwhelm the server. This is being actively exploited in the wild to cause denial of service. If you're running SerView, you need to patch immediately. The 2-week remediation window is aggressive because of the active exploitation. CV-2000 and 26-45247 was added June 3rd with a June 6th deadline. That's today. This affects Murisvit full-page cache warmer and contains a deserialization of untrusted data vulnerability that allows unauthenticated attackers to achieve remote code execution. Deserialization flaws are particularly dangerous because they often give attackers complete control of the system. If you're using this Magento extension, you're out of time. Patch now. CV-2000 and 22-492 was added June 2nd with a June 5th deadline. That was yesterday. This is a Linux kernel improper authentication vulnerability that allows privilege escalation via the cgroup's Vone release agent feature. This is an older CVE from 2022 that's being added now because CISA has evidence of exploitation. The fact that a 4-year-old kernel vulnerability is still being exploited in the wild tells you how many systems are running outdated kernels. Container escape attacks often leverage C-group vulnerabilities like this. CV-2025-48595 was also added June 2nd with a June 5th deadline. This Android framework integer overflow vulnerability allows code execution that could lead to local privilege escalation. If you're managing Android device fleets, make sure you're pushing the latest security updates. CV-2024-21182 was added June 1st with a June 4th deadline. This is an Oracle WebLogic Server unspecified vulnerability that allows unauthenticated attackers with network access via T3 or IIOP to compromise Oracle WebLogic. T3 is WebLogic's proprietary protocol, and this kind of unauthenticated remote exploitation is about as bad as it gets for enterprise Java application servers. CV-2026-257 was added May 29th with a June 1st deadline. Palo Alto Networks PAN-OS contains an authentication bypass vulnerability in Global Protect that allows attackers to bypass security restrictions and establish unauthorized connections. Palo Alto Unit 42 has a threat brief on active exploitation of this CVE. This is critical. These are your VPN gateways and firewalls, and attackers can bypass authentication entirely. We'll talk more about other Palo Alto CVEs in a moment. Now moving beyond CISA's catalog, Bleeping Computer reports that suspicious polyfill login prompts are popping up on major websites including Toshiba and Muji. This appears to be a supply chain attack through compromised JavaScript libraries. If you're a web developer using polyfill services, audit your dependencies immediately. Bleeping Computer also reports that a Chinese app is deploying new malware to maintain access to hacked networks. This is about persistence. Once attackers are in, they deploy multiple backdoors so that even if defenders find and remove one, others remain. The malware includes sophisticated anti-forensics capabilities to avoid detection. Over 900 U.S. gas station tank gauge systems are exposed to attacks according to Bleeping Computer. These are the systems that monitor fuel levels in underground storage tanks. They're connected to the internet for remote monitoring but often have weak or default credentials. The potential for environmental damage from manipulated tank systems is significant. Cisco has a serious problem according to Bleeping Computer. They're warning of an unpatched SD-WAN 0-day being exploited in attacks. The flaw allows attackers to gain root access on affected systems. Cisco SD-WAN is widely deployed in enterprise networks, and root access means complete compromise. There's no patch yet, so Cisco is recommending mitigation steps while they work on a fix. Krebs on Security has a fascinating and troubling story. Hackers used Meta's AI support bot to seize Instagram accounts. Attackers figured out how to manipulate Meta's customer service chatbot into resetting account credentials without proper verification. This is a new attack vector, social engineering against AI systems rather than human support staff. Schneier on Security also covered this story, noting it as an example of hacking Meta's AI chatbot. The implications are broad. As companies deploy AI for customer service, we need to think carefully about authentication and authorization in those systems. Schneier has another interesting piece on AI worms, malware that can propagate through AI systems and prompts. As AI systems become more interconnected and autonomous, we need to think about how malware might spread through prompt injection and model manipulation. Schneier also covered AI being used to decrypt medieval ciphers, which is actually a positive security story. Researchers are using machine learning to break historical encryption and read previously unreadable texts. It demonstrates both the power of modern cryptanalysis and the weakness of historical encryption methods. The Netherlands made a major law enforcement move according to Krebs on Security. They seized 800 servers and arrested 2 people for aiding cyberattacks. This was a bulletproof hosting operation that provided infrastructure for criminals while ignoring abuse complaints. Taking down 800 servers in one operation is significant and will disrupt multiple criminal operations. Krebs is also reporting that lawmakers are demanding answers as CISA tries to contain a data leak. Apparently, a CISA admin leaked AWS Gov Cloud keys on GitHub. Government cloud credentials were accidentally pushed to a public repository. Krebs has been covering this story extensively, including the alleged Kimwolf botmaster Dort being arrested and charged in the US and Canada. Schneier wrote about Microsoft threatening a security researcher. When researchers find vulnerabilities, companies sometimes respond with legal threats rather than thanks. This chilling effect on security research is dangerous. We need researchers to find and report flaws, and threatening them discourages responsible disclosure. Palo Alto has released multiple security advisories. Beyond CV-2000 and 26-257, that's in CISA's catalog, they've announced CV-2000 and 26-251, a local privilege escalation in the Global Protect app rated medium severity. CV-2000 and 26-250 is a buffer overflow vulnerability during connection to portal or gateway, also medium severity. CV-2000 and 26-249 covers certificate validation bypass vulnerabilities in the Global Protect app. And CV-2000 and 26-259 affects wildfire appliances WF-500 and WF-500B, allowing arbitrary file read and delete, rated medium severity. Unit 42 has published updated threat intelligence on the NPM threat landscape, detailing the attack surface and mitigations. They're also covering Operation Flutterbridge, a macOS malvertising campaign spreading a new Fluttershell backdoor. The attackers are using malicious ads to distribute Mac malware, and the Flutter framework makes the malware cross-platform capable. Unit 42 has interesting analysis of the 2026 World Cup's attack surface. With a major sporting event, you have ticketing systems, mobile apps, stadium infrastructure, payment systems, and broadcast technology all presenting potential targets. And they've published research on the evolving cyber extortion economy, how ransomware and extortion tactics are changing as defenders get better at backups and recovery. SANS Internet Storm Center notes that the evil MSI background is back. Attackers are again using malicious Microsoft installer packages hidden behind innocent-looking backgrounds to deliver malware. They're also seeing continuing scans for Swagger JSON files. Attackers probe for API documentation files that often reveal sensitive endpoints and parameters. The CVE database from NVD shows some interesting historical entries being updated, including very old vulnerabilities in SendMail, FTPD, and SunOS that demonstrate how some classes of vulnerabilities have persisted across decades. Buffer overflows, privilege escalation, and authentication bypass remain perennial issues. Time for science and space. NASA has major news. The X-59 aircraft has flown supersonic for the first time. This is NASA's Quest mission. The X-59 is designed to fly faster than sound while producing a much quieter sonic thump instead of a traditional sonic boom. The goal is to enable supersonic flight over land without the disruptive noise that led to bans on supersonic commercial aviation. The successful first supersonic flight is a critical milestone. If NASA can demonstrate that supersonic flight can be quiet enough for overland routes, it could revolutionize commercial aviation and dramatically reduce flight times. NASA has also announced winners of their 2026 University Innovation Competition. Universities submitted proposals for technology development projects, and the winning teams will receive funding and mentorship from NASA. This is how NASA seeds the next generation of aerospace technology, by engaging university research teams early. Research for NASA's Artemis II moon mission continues on Earth. While Artemis II will be the first crewed mission beyond low Earth orbit in over 50 years, tremendous work is happening on the ground. Teams are testing life support systems, radiation protection, communication systems, and abort procedures. The human factors research happening now will inform not just Artemis II, but the entire Artemis program as NASA works towards sustainable lunar exploration. NASA has concluded an antenna mishap investigation and released the report. While the specific details concern a particular antenna system, these investigations are valuable because they identify failure modes and inform future design decisions. Transparency about failures is how the aerospace community learns and improves. NASA also shared a historical photo feature, First Steps, America's grueling second spacewalk. The early spacewalks were extraordinarily difficult and dangerous. Astronauts were learning in real time how to work in vacuum, dealing with suit mobility issues, thermal control, and the physical exhaustion of fighting against a pressurized suit. Those early missions established the techniques and procedures that make modern spacewalks routine. Speaking of spacewalks and the space station, Hacker News and Ars Technica are reporting on a worrying turn in the International Space Station air leak saga. The story on Hacker News got 398 points and 251 comments. Ars Technica reports that astronauts were told to return to the ISS after sheltering due to air leak repairs. Work on Russia's leaky space station module caused the crew to take shelter temporarily. The persistent air leak in the Russian segment has been a growing concern, and Friday's events highlight how serious the situation is becoming. The station is showing its age. It's been continuously occupied since November 2000, and the Russian modules are among the oldest components. NASA and Roscosmos are working to manage the leak, but it's becoming increasingly difficult to maintain safe pressure. Ars Technica reports that a small modular nuclear reactor has reached criticality in its first test. This is the first U.S. test of a modular reactor reaching criticality. Small modular reactors are seen as potentially game-changing for nuclear power. They're factory-built, more economical for smaller grids, and potentially safer due to passive safety systems. Reaching criticality in testing is a major milestone that demonstrates the fundamental physics works as designed. The University of Rochester has announced a new method that turns ocean water into drinking water without waste. Hacker News gave this 375 points and 160 comments. Desalination typically produces concentrated brine that's difficult to dispose of. It's too salty to discharge into the ocean safely in many environments. A desalination method that eliminates waste brine would be revolutionary for water security, especially as climate change stresses freshwater supplies. Hacker News also has a pre-modern armies for world builders piece that's getting 77 points. It's from a collection of unmitigated pedantry, a historian's blog that goes deep on historical accuracy for fiction writers. This first part covers why armies fought. While not strictly science, it's rigorous historical scholarship. Let's wrap up with markets and close out the show. Bloomberg is reporting that jobs and inflation data are feeding rate hike bets globally. Despite economic strain from the Iran war, hiring surged in May according to PBS NewsHour. The labor market remains surprisingly resilient, which is causing central bankers to reconsider the pace of rate cuts. Markets are now pricing in the possibility that the Federal Reserve might even need to hike rates if inflation remains elevated while employment stays strong. China's financial regulator is deepening its focus on returns in a mutual fund overhaul, according to Bloomberg. This is part of Beijing's broader effort to strengthen its capital markets and restore investor confidence after years of volatility. Bloomberg also has a piece on why Susquehanna is building a prediction market business. The major trading firm sees prediction markets as an emerging asset class with real informational value, and they're positioning to be a major player in that space. The S&P 500 has rejected SpaceX according to Ars Technica, which is also blocking entry for OpenAI and Anthropic. The index won't waive its profitability requirements even for high-profile private companies. This is significant because inclusion in the S&P 500 would have brought substantial passive investment flows, but the index committee is holding the line on its standards. And Hacker News notes that the back cover of the book C++, the language raises questions not answered by the front cover. Sometimes even programming language books have mysteries. Thank you for tuning in to the Clovis Brief. Tomorrow we'll dive deeper into that rsync and AI-generated code controversy. I want to talk to some kernel developers about what they're seeing with AI assistance in systems programming. We'll also have updates on the International Space Station leak situation and continuing developments from the Gulf. Stay curious, stay secure, and I'll talk to you tomorrow.